Welcome to our lecture on health and safety in the workplace. So we have some questions here to start off. Do you know whether your actions create a health or safety risk, either for yourself or for others? Some people may be unaware of that. And then, do you have a good understanding of health and safety within your organization? Or even if it's not within your organization, it could be within your home or your work environment or your school environment. And do you know where responsibility lies? Who do you go to for health and safety within your organization or at school or even in your home? Who's responsible for that? These are some questions that we are going to try to address in this lecture. Now, most managers need to ensure in the work environment, they need to ensure that they operate in a safe manner. And not only do they need to ensure that they operate in a safe manner, but that they provide sufficient information and training so that all staff for whom they're responsible are able to meet these requirements of working in a healthy and a safe environment. So that is the responsibility for all managers, whether they know it or not, and they should be aware of it. And that's what we're going to expand on. And we're going to expand on it by looking at it in two ways. One, general health and safety, and two, working in an information systems environment. And an information systems environment includes an information technology environment. All right, so with the General Health and Safety, the main legislation is the Health and Safety at Work Act. And you should know the latest act, whether it is 2007, whether it's 2012, you should know. You should be able to tell me what the date is for the latest act. Okay? And this legislation places the responsibility for health and safety in the workplace on both persons who are in the workplace, for the employer and the employee. And let's see how that works out. So for the employers, we have a lot of responsibilities here. Let's start with the first one. They need to ensure that the workplace is safe and without risk to the health of their employees. They need to ensure that the workplace is clean and controls the level of dust and fumes and noise. We need to ensure that both the plant and the machinery, if it's that sort of environment, that they're safe to work with and that safe work practices are set out and that they're followed. You need to provide employees with all necessary information, all necessary instruction, training, and supervision for health and safety. And therefore, you need to put in place and implement, not only put in place, but you need to implement a health and safety policy in the workplace. Do you have one at home? Is there one at school? Employers should also provide any protective clothing and equipment that is specifically required by health and safety legislation. So for example, at a university where we would have a chemistry lab or a biology lab where they're working with those chemicals, you would find them wearing lab coats. That's the sort of protective clothing, or goggles, okay? That sort of protective clothing we're talking about, or even a mask. The employer must also report injuries, diseases, any dangerous incidents to the appropriate enforcing authority, which is why you need to know if something happens, who do you report it to? Who should be aware of it? Okay? Also, you need to provide adequate first aid facilities and training. If anything happens, you need to have those facilities in place. For example, on campus, you would have the health clinic, and they would be able to have those first aid, that first aid equipment there. And of course, they're trained. Employers must take adequate precautions to prevent fire and provide appropriate meaning appropriate means, of firefighting. So when we talk about appropriate means, we are talking about the sprinklers, the extinguishers, have fire blankets we will throw on a fire, okay, to prevent that fire or to stop it. They also need to provide adequate means of escape. So that's why if you go in any of our rooms, our lecture theaters and our rooms, you should see that red exit sign. You should have both doors are swinging. You shouldn't really have one locked so that you can escape at a moment's notice. You must maintain a suitable workroom temperature or an environment after the first hour of work, where employees do most of their work sitting down. So in our lecture theaters, in our lecture rooms, you either have windows open that you can have adequate ventilation, or the air conditioning is supposed to be at a certain temperature that you're comfortable, not freezing and not too hot. All right. Of course, you need to provide, maintain, and keep the washing and the bathroom facilities, and ensure that employees don't have to lift or carry any or take any load so heavy that is likely to injure any of them, and to ensure that objects and substances are stored and used safely. So these are a lot of responsibilities for the employer. Let's see about the employee. The employee must first comply with the organization's routine health and safety procedures. So if we have a fire drill, you're supposed to, respond to it. If they're testing the sound, they're going to let you know that, yes, we're testing the safety equipment today, so that, you will know how to comply. Take appropriate action if a hazardous or potentially hazardous situation arises. So you need to know what to do if something happens, and ensure that your work area is tidy and free from hazards. So when you go in the lab, you shouldn't have certain things around you that may, cause a hazard or a risk to yourself or to others. So what are some of those hazards? Okay, first let's talk about a definition. A hazard or hazards are those aspects of the environment. All right, so you have aspects of the environment, and you also have the equipment, or you also have a working practice. All three of those can prevent hazards if they're unsafe. Okay, so an environment that's unsafe could be a hazard, equipment that's unsafe can be a hazard, or working practice that is unsafe can be a hazard. You've got that, those three aspects. Okay, but then you have a potential hazard. It's less obvious, but it might be there building and building and building to become a hazard. So that's why we also need to be aware of that. Well, so when does this potential hazard become an actual hazard? Remember, if we don't pay attention, if we're so oblivious, we've got in our earbuds and our headphones, and we're not listening, or we're not paying attention to something, that can cause a hazard. Lack of foresight. If you can't say, well, okay, I see something happening, maybe I should move it, change it, notify somebody about it, that can become a potential hazard. Okay. For example, if the lab, you have a microcomputer lab, and unfortunately, suppose the roof is leaking of water, will you take a photo of it or a video of it, or will you notify the powers that be? Okay, because lack of foresight, remember, water and electricity don't necessarily go together. So you may cause some electrical hazard then, which may cause somebody to become electrocuted. So you would need to stop that water by coming down, or move the computers to a safer location, or notify somebody right away. So these are examples of potential hazards becoming actual hazards. Okay. Taking shortcuts, coincidence of circumstances, something's happening that you didn't expect, but you need to at least, be able to think quickly. All right. And these are some of the ones. I just mentioned that one before with that potential hazard, or what we should do in a lab. But here are some others. That shiny floor, if some liquid spills on it, you might slip. You have an open window that gets caught, and it slams the window shut, but then the glass in it shatters. That can give a hazard because the glass then might spread and cut someone. All right, or the window can shut and fly back open quickly and hit someone. You know that fizzy drink that users may put next to their computer get knocked over, damages the keyboard, maybe a potential electrical hazard. I just alluded to something very similar. That filing cabinet drawer you're going to leave open all the time, and someone may walk into it because it's at the bottom. They're looking straight ahead, not looking down. If you take a computer, you move it to another part of the room, but you're stretching out the cables, okay? That could be a potential hazard. Someone can trip. You can stretch the cable and cause a problem. Even if you have, let's say, a laser printer and you're in a closed area, the particles of toner released in the air can also cause a hazard because people will be inhaling it, okay? And that could be a health hazard. Passageways and corridors being obstructed, cables that are frayed or damaged. You know, the ground cable is missing, so you just plug in with the other two and leave the ground cable, you know, or plugs that are unearthed. All of these are just examples. And of course, there are many, many more that I'm sure when we start to discuss it, you can think about. Well, what should you do about a hazard? Now, if it's within your control, I would hope that we will all try to prevent it if it's within our control. Make sure, for example, when boxes of stationery are delivered, we put them away. If there's a waste bin in the passageway, you know, move it before someone trips up. You don't want someone to stand on a swivel chair, of course, but you know, there's some people who want to read something and they may very well do that. But if you do have this here, something happens, who do you report it to? Okay, so you may have responsibility for the working environment. You may have responsibility for staff or for others in your care. Remember, we're here in this lecture, we're talking about managers and in a working environment, but you can extend that to your school environment and your home environment. Okay, so we need to encourage others to report hazards before this accident happens. Okay, if it is not within your control to rectify it, then you should really let someone know. All right, you need to report to someone who can respond and correct it. Of course, in a fire, you call the fire station. If it's a person in charge of your home or in charge of some environment, you inform the person in charge. All right. And everyone concerned should be aware of the reporting procedure. So employers and employees, students, staff, we should all be aware of who we should report, what you should do. You should document when something happened. If you saw something before, if it was electrical, if it was thunder and lightning and rain, you know, you document something, because we tend to forget in the way we're caught up with the episode and telling people and so on. Of course, if you can, you take a picture of the environment so that people can see and prevent it from happening the next time. All right. And then, of course, training and the use of clear, simple signs can also assist in raising awareness. A simple sign saying evacuation location here, exit. All right. So you should know the procedure in case of anything, which door to take, which path to take, where to go first. If we have the earth tremor, where do you go? Where do you assemble? What do you do? Okay? There's some people who might think they got to shut down the computer and pick up the bag and everything. If your life is in danger, what should you do first? Good? So let's talk a little bit about emergencies. And emergencies are broken down for this lecture into 5 subcategories. We have accidents, first aid, illness, fire, and evacuation. So for the first one with accidents, of course, you notice I keep repeating it all the time. Make sure your workplace, make sure your environment, whether it's at school or home, is a safe environment. Okay? If you have an accident, you report it, you record as many aspects of what happened so that we could understand what happened and we could prevent it from happening again. In a work environment, this record is kept safe for a number of years. Some people keep it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. All right? If it is a serious accident, even with minor accidents, you still need to investigate it, as I said before, so you could prevent it from happening again. And if it is serious, you report it then to the more serious person. You will hope the senior person would be a health and safety officer or someone higher up in management or another management person. Okay? In your home environment, you need to know then who do you tell. Children would then come and tell their parents or an adult. You follow what I'm saying? In the school environment, you would know, you tell your lecturer or you tell the health and safety person. Which, by the way, I should ask you, do you know if we have a health and safety officer on campus? Do you also know if we do have a health and safety officer, who that person is and how we can contact them? So we need to know that as well. For first aid, there is a regulation that companies and universities and even at home, we should really have a first aid kit. All right, we should know a little bit of first aid, but in businesses, in companies, they should have a first aid facility, all right, to make sure that they can assist persons and even have a first aid room. This is determined if you have a first aid room or even qualified first aiders. This is determined based on the size of the organization, okay? If it's small, you might need to just go to an emergency room or something. And how hazardous the environment is. If you're in a company that's making, I don't know, some sort of spray, insecticide or something, you know, then you need to have these things in place. For first aid kits, shouldn't really have in pharmaceutical drugs. Because under the regulations, first aiders should not give out any medication. Because if you're allergic, if the person they give the medication to has any allergies or sensitivities, and then they have an adverse reaction, then that person who's given that drug could be, you know, in legal jeopardy, in trouble. So you don't usually give out anything. They should have their own medication on them. For illness, of course, you know, from time to time people become ill at home. You will then call your supervisor, you call your line manager, you call your lecturer, you call someone and tell them you're unable to come in. But if you become ill while you're at work, of course, you're going to tell your supervisor. If someone is ill during my lecture or my tutorial, you know, they should tell me so that I can either provide assistance to get them home or take them down to the health clinic or something like that. All right, if you don't know the correct procedure, call a first aider. If you know a first aider, try not to deal with something outside of your scope. You call someone, anyone, but you make sure you keep calling on someone, as people will spread the word and get someone to help. Okay, and then finally, this is very important. Maybe we should all become first aiders. Okay, our expertise and knowledge from first aid will be extremely valuable to all of us. Not just at work, but as I said, you know, in school environment and at home. So all of us should really consider that one becoming a first aider. In terms of fire, your employer should have a number of precautions, but even in your home or in school, we should have these in place. We should have our fire doors. So fire door is something that keeps the fire out. Okay, so it doesn't come through the door, so it's made of a special material. We should have fire extinguishers, smoke detectors. I have smoke detectors in my home. You should have sprinklers. These smoke detectors, when last I checked, they should cost under $30 from any hardware store. Work on batteries. You just replace the batteries. You do a random check. There's a button that you can press to check. You know, so we should have all those in our homes. We should really not have people who smoke around us. They tend to, you know, flick. That's why we have used to have a lot of cane fires. People flick the cigarette butt out the window and it catches on the dry grass, that sort of thing. Arrange regular fire inspections. If you are burning stuff around your home, I know my neighbor has done that on occasion, and she's called the fire truck to come and at least be there, you know, if she's burning a large area, and they do come. Talking about fires, we can group them into a number of different types. So let us look here at figure 1 with the types of fires. We have here 5 classes of fire here, and we talk about the substance that's burning. So if it's a class A, then it would be paper, wood, or, you know, materials, you know, a sort of fabric. Anything liquid, fat, paint, spirits, oil, then that's a class B. Gases would be a class C, metals would be class D, and then of course you have electrical fires. Over with figure 2, we have the different types of fire extinguishers. So for the class A, if it is a paper, wood, or fabric fire, then you would want to use water then to out that fire. You would use halon if it was anything other than a metal, and just checked on halon. Halon is a liquefied compressed gas that stops the spread of fire by chemically disrupting combustion. So it stops it from spreading, okay, and it leaves no residue, and it's safe for human exposure. So that is a halon there. And then we come on to the third one. Anything other than a metal or an electrical fire, you're going to use foam. Anything other than your metal fire, then you will use gas. For the one here with carbon dioxide, if it is liquid, fat, paint, spirits, or oil, gases, or electrical, you're going to use carbon dioxide. And then for a metal, you're going to use a powder, all right, to get rid of that fire. So you're wondering what these colors here mean. I have a note here at the bottom. All new portable extinguishers are colored red, but they have a zone or a panel of color that indicates the contents. So when next you're in lecture, or when next you see a portable extinguisher, take a look at it and see what is on the side, what the zone is. And you say, ah, okay, now I know what it contains. All right. Okay, so for emergencies, let's talk now. We're continuing with emergencies. Let's continue with evacuation. Sometimes it's necessary to evacuate a building when you have a bomb threat in the building. I have here an asterisk next to severe flooding, because if there is severe flooding and you are higher up, it depends. You don't have to evacuate. It depends on the circumstance. For example, if we are in lecture theater 4, which is up a number of steps, and there's flooding below, for example, we are going to be up an incline and then up another incline for where the seating is arranged. So if there's flooding, you might want to, you know, stay safe by stay above the flooding, but it depends on where the flooding is. And then, of course, if there's a gas leak, yes, you need to evacuate. You should have regular fire evacuation drills. Usually on campus, we have it once every semester, so we should listen out for if it's going to happen this semester. Your alarm should be tested frequently to ensure that they all work. So what you should do is really investigate the health and safety of your working environment, your home environment. Now that we've learned a few things, let us see, you know, what we have, what we're aware of. And then find out who is in charge of the training program to ensure that you're fully aware of the health and safety practices in your workplace. For University of the West Indies, we have a health and safety and environmental officer, and her name is Mrs. Nicole Sue. Her number is here, so therefore you should make a note of it. You never know if you will ever need it, but it's always good to have it handy. Let's move on to working in the information technology environment. Well, we are all aware well, we should be aware about when we're working, how we should really sit. I know many of us have, you know, after you're working for a long time, you may tend to slouch and so on, but then we need to be aware of, you know, our actions and how we are sitting so that we don't cause any stress on our bodies. So your computer workstation, when you go into any lab or even at work when you go to sit, you should adjust your workstation to fit you. Okay? And whoever is sitting there, they should adjust it to fit them. When you get into your car or someone else, if you share in a car, when you get in, you should adjust the seat. You adjust the height, you adjust, the width, so that it works for you. And the same thing you should do when you're working with a computer. You need to check the height of the chair, the support, your back support that's provided, mobility of the seating position. Can you swivel the chair around? Is the wheel stuck? Also, the image on the screen, is it clear? All right, is it to the height of your eyes? What about the layout of the workstation? Are you comfortable with it? What are the conditions, the lighting conditions of the room? Is the lighting too bright? Is it too dull? Are they shades? Can you see the screen with the lights on and off? Those are the different things that you need to be aware of. So I hope you have learned a bit about health and safety in the workplace, and that we can answer some questions about health and safety in various situations. Thank you for watching and for listening. Until next time, best wishes.